Last week in Michigan politics, a race against the clock in Lansing, or is it? As a deadline looms over how the state will choose to spend your tax dollars, why a deal may not be reached in time. Plus, after authorities allege this suspect shot two state lawmakers in Minnesota and their spouses last weekend, killing one of the couples, multiple Democratic lawmakers here in Michigan now say they were on the suspect's list. What they're now telling us. And it's been the talk of the town here in Grand Rapids for a while now. The new details we're learning about the ambitious aquarium that could be built right here in West Michigan. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on your side rundown. We begin this week with coverage of the shootings of two Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses last weekend. West Michigan Congresswoman Hillary Slaken says she was told she was also on a list of names compiled by the suspect. That situation so serious, Representative Slaken and her team postponing a town hall that was set to happen Monday in Muskegon. But she said that apparent threat can't distract from her work.
Call from Michigan State Police last night informing me that I had been identified on the list.
A shocking discovery for a high-profile West Michigan lawmaker.
GRPD had sent protective services over, I think, within about 5 minutes of getting that call.
After two Minnesota state lawmakers and their spouses were shot over the weekend, killing one of the couples, authorities arresting the suspect, Vance Bolter.
That's 48 hours that law enforcement involved in a complex and dangerous manhunt. Spent Father's Day away from their families to deliver justice for Melissa and Mark Hortman and their children who spent this Father's Day alone.
Now, West Michigan Representative Hillary Slaken says, according to law enforcement, she was on what she called a secondary list.
Obviously a big revelation that this was not only contained to Minnesota.
And she apparently wasn't the only one. Slaken saying she was one of multiple people from Michigan, but wouldn't identify who. The Detroit Free Press reporting Monday others whose spokespeople had confirmed they were named amongst the suspect's documents included at least 5 other Democratic members of the state's congressional delegation. Representatives Debbie Dingell, Haley Stevens, Shri Tanadar, and Rashida Tlaib, as well as U.S. Senator Alyssa Slaken. Authorities believe the Minnesota shootings were politically targeted. If so, it only adds to a growing list of incidents or attempts at political violence in America.
This shooting took place on the anniversary of the shooting of Steve Scalise, a Republican, as he was preparing for the congressional baseball game. It knows no political side.
Out of an abundance of caution, Slaken already postponing a town hall that had been set for Muskegon Monday night. Hundreds, she said, were expected to attend.
We wanted to just make sure that everyone could enjoy a safe experience where they felt, just completely unhindered to come and engage with their representatives.
But ultimately, Slaken believes it can't distract from the work she was tasked to do.
There's so many people who are afraid right now about the direction of our country, and they're counting on their representatives to be able to do their jobs unhindered. And that is exactly what I intend to do.
And as the week went on, multiple Democratic officials here in Michigan confirmed to 13 on your side they were told their names were listed amongst the suspect's documents. More details coming to light after two Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses were shot over the weekend, killing one of the couples. Authorities arresting the suspect, Vance Bolter, earlier this week in connection to what officials believe to have been politically targeted violence.
They cannot become normalized.
Now, responses from other leaders who were told their names were amongst the suspect's documents. Another of those names, Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson.
Well, I was grateful for Colonel Grady of the Michigan State Police for calling us all personally, letting us know, and also calling with a plan for how they were going to keep every single one of us safe.
Benson among multiple Michigan Democratic officials who say they were told their names were listed. Both West Michigan Congresswoman Hillary Slaken and the office of U.S. Senator Alyssa Slaken confirming to 13 on your side Monday their names were included. After a separate event in her campaign for governor Tuesday night, Benson speaking to 13 on Your Side, saying it wouldn't deter her from her work.
But at the same time, it is quite harrowing and a sober reminder of the direct line between a lot of the noise and the rhetoric that we hear too often today from politicians to those who would want to use that rhetoric to commit harmful acts or violent acts or worse.
At a time where many feel confirmed or perceived political violence is on the rise in America, leaders like Benson theorizing as to what the way out may be.
We have to maintain our commitment to service and seeing each other and learning from each other and collaborating with each other instead of allowing division and hate and chaos to tear us apart.
And at the state capitol, lawmakers have been working on a new state budget for months. But with the deadline quickly approaching, lawmakers do not appear to be close to reaching a deal. The deadline gives time for places like schools to know what they have to work with ahead of the school year. But even though both the state Senate and the House have passed ideas for an education budget, there's a lot of negotiation, it seems, to be done before they can become one.
These are taxpayer dollars.
And where should the money you pay in state taxes go? Under the Capitol dome, it depends on who you ask.
The Republican caucus doesn't take this very seriously.
I don't have confidence that the Senate Democrats are serious.
Lawmakers seeking to finalize their annual state budget under a looming deadline. On one side of the building, the Democratic-controlled Senate passing a budget last month featuring things including increased funding for universal school breakfast and lunches, and slight but across-the-board increases for state university operations.
We are investing record money back into our classrooms, something that we've been able to do the last 2 years. We're continuing down on that tradition.
And on the other, the Republican-controlled House passing an education budget last week featuring key sticking points. According to legislative analysts, it includes large boosts in operations funding for most universities in the state, but big reductions in that funding for Michigan State University and the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor.
We're going to get a better return on investment for the taxpayer if we put that money into universities like Ferris and Western and Central and Northern and Michigan Tech that are actually getting a much better return on investment for the Michigan taxpayer.
But the clock is ticking. Under state law signed by Governor Gretchen Whitmer, it says the legislature shall get their annual budget done by July 1st each year.
How many days is it until July 1st?
But in truth, there's no legal penalty if they don't.
It is like the one duty of the legislature, right, to do a budget.
I've always preferred to get this done by July 1. I just am dealing with a group of people that are not serious about getting it done.
But as Hall said, ample time has been given to negotiate, a caucus spokesperson pushing back.
That's a very interesting take. I hope so. I hope that he's actually willing to have conversations.
Advocates for Gift of Life Michigan rallied at the state capitol this week, supporting 2 bills surrounding organ and tissue donation. More than 300 people were in Lansing for the annual Check Your Heart rally. Republican State Senator Joe Bellino was there and previously introduced the 2 bills. One would encourage public schools to teach students about organ and tissue donation by the time they're freshmen in high school. The other would allow employers to claim a tax credit if they give their workers paid time off when they become living organ donors. Bellino says he knows how important that is because he donated his kidney to his brother-in-law.
I came to work right after because I have a sitting job. I don't pick heavy things up. But for people that pick heavy things up, they have a physical job, you need at least 8 weeks. Usually it's 10 before you feel right. For anybody listening, if you've got a chance to be a living donor, go for it. It'll be the greatest thing you ever did in your whole life.
Both bills were in committee as of earlier this week, so they could have a long way to go. But Bellino says organ donation is a cause both Republicans and Democrats support. On Capitol Hill, a fiery exchange between Michigan U.S. Senator Alyssa Slaken and Defense Secretary Pete Hegsith over interaction between protesters and the U.S. military in Los Angeles. It came at the tail end of a Senate Armed Services hearing on the Pentagon's budget request for fiscal year 2026. Senator Slaken brought up the protests in L.A. and then asked questions about what the SecDef had or had not authorized troops to do. Then this moment unfolds.
Have you given the order to be able to shoot at unarmed protesters in any way? I'm just asking the question. Don't laugh. Like the whole country. And by the way, my colleagues across the aisle.
What is that based on? What evidence would you have that an order like that has ever been given?
Giving that order to your predecessor, to a Republican Secretary of Defense, who I give a lot of credit to because he didn't accept the order. He had more guts and than you, because he said, I'm not going to send in the uniformed military to do something that I know in my gut isn't right. He was asked to shoot at their legs. He wrote that in his book. That's not hearsay. I want the answer to be no. Please tell me it's no. Have you given the order?
Senator, I'd be careful what you read in books and believing it, except for the Bible.
Oh my God.
Here locally, regular protests against ICE are continuing in downtown Grand Rapids. Movimiento Cosecha organized a protest last week at Calder Plaza ahead of a scheduled city commission meeting that was canceled. Their leaders wanted the city to adopt policies preventing Grand Rapids police from working with ICE. Chief Eric Winstrom has previously said GRPD is, quote, not in the business of immigration enforcement. But one leader with the group doesn't feel city leaders are taking their concerns seriously.
They don't want to hear it. So my hope is in the community. My hope is, how the display of community came, and then the more pressure, the more community, and then we ask them to bring more people to city commissions the next time.
Those protests happened just as we learned a facility in Baldwin is now housing people that ICE has detained. ICE confirmed with us last week the North Lake Correctional Facility began accepting detainees. The GEO group operates the facility, which has 1,800 beds, making it one of the largest ICE detention facilities in the country. It was built in 1999 and has gone through several openings and closures over the last few decades. This week, the ACLU released a statement in opposition of the facility being used to house detainees. They say GEO has a, quote, documented history of neglecting and abusing people it detains and employs, unquote. According to GEO's website, the company has adopted a global human rights policy and is committed to safeguarding the rights of inmates and detainees. 3 congressional Republicans from here in Michigan have introduced a bill they say will protect a controversial pipeline that runs through the Straits of Mackinac. Representatives John Molinar, Tim Walberg, and Jack Bergman want to keep Line 5 open. They say it provides low-cost energy for our state. The Canadian company Enbridge operates the pipeline, which is the subject of multiple ongoing lawsuits. It carries crude oil from Wisconsin through Michigan into Canada. Environmental activists worry about what would happen if the aging pipeline were to rupture. But the 3 lawmakers who introduced the proposed Line 5 Act say the pipeline is safe, secure, and reliable. A controversial new policy for Michigan State Police has some powerful people speaking out against it. Coming up, what the policy includes and why some believe it's a major overstep. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel and Congresswoman Hillary Scholten met with a local organization Tuesday to talk about the impact of federal funding cuts. The National Court-appointed Special Advocates, or CASA, program says it's feeling the impacts of these cuts. CASA is a nonprofit that connects volunteers with abused and neglected children in the foster care system and provides them with resources. The roundtable discussion included CASA representatives from Wayne, Kalamazoo, Eaton, Ingham, Muskegon, and Ottawa counties.
We set these funds out for a reason, right? As representatives, we're the voice of the people. The people, let's not forget, said they wanted the money spent this way because most people are good and have a conscience, and they want to protect vulnerable kids in our community.
You know, a former child abuse prosecutor from Wayne County, I can tell you right now, like the difference between having a CASA volunteer and not having one makes in the life of one of those kids, because it's the stuff of nightmares, really, when you don't have the right people in the right places advocating for these children.
Nessel also says the Attorney General's office will pursue legal action if Michigan CASA programs are impacted by cuts. And Attorney General Nessel's office this week executed a search warrant at the Lansing headquarters of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. A spokesperson for the Attorney General's office told us it's part of an ongoing investigation, but could not provide further information. A home in Farmington Hills was also raided. In a statement, a spokesperson for MEEDC called the raid unwarranted and unnecessary. The corporation's CEO was in Australia with Governor Gretchen Whitmer as part of an economic development trip when the warrant was executed. Some state lawmakers and the Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Michigan are voicing distrust in a new policy adopted by Michigan State Police last year. It requires investigations that find credible evidence of potential criminal activity involving state departments, facilities, institutions, or commissions to be directed to the Attorney General's office. Criminal investigations involving use of deadly force by an officer would also be referred to the AG. But historically, the Attorneys Association said, cases that involved many state employees and departments were first reviewed by local prosecutors. In a statement, the association says it interferes with prosecutors' duties under the law. Michigan Senator Jim Runstead also condemned the policy. He also connected it to the recent survey that showed distrust in the department's leaders. He then called for the colonel and lieutenant colonel of the MSP to step down. In its order, MSP signaled the new policy was meant to, quote, ensure consistency in any prosecution subsequent to a criminal investigation. Now to Ottawa County, where the search for a new administrator continues, but soon it will be with a new firm. A spokesperson for Double Hall Solutions, the Brighton-based search firm the county was using, told us they are splitting with the county. In a statement, they said, quote, the decision to part ways stemmed from a shift in the county's preferred director for the process, unquote. Earlier this month, commissioners made the decision to pause the search for a new administrator after hearing from only one remaining candidate for the job. Ottawa County has been without a permanent county administrator since John Gibbs was fired in February of 2024. The Department of Attorney General filed a request for a rehearing challenging the U.S. Department of Energy's order to stop the retirement of Consumers Energy's J.H. Campbell coal-fired power plant in West Olive. Just weeks before the plant's planned retirement, the DOE ordered it to remain open, declaring an energy emergency for portions of the Midwest grid due to possible energy shortages during peak times this summer. Consumers Energy stated it would comply with the order, while Michigan's Public Service Commission pushed back, calling it unnecessary and claiming it will make electric energy more expensive. Now, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel is echoing the MPSC's claim by challenging the order, claiming that the DOE is exceeding its authority. In a release, Nessel said, quote, this unprecedented order of the Department of Energy declares an emergency without evidence, completely ignores state and federal regulators that approved the plant's retirement, and will potentially put enormous costs onto utility customers who receive no real benefit. She added, quote, as I have done throughout my years in office, today we're fighting for affordable utility bills and the rights of Michiganders to clean up their energy production. The Attorney General said that the DOE has 30 days to respond to her request. A Grand Rapids energy provider is marking a milestone toward its clean energy commitment. Vicinity started the installation of a new electric boiler. It will produce thermal energy to serve customers. The 3-year project is using a $2 million grant from the Michigan Public Service Commission to build the plant's first new boiler in 60 years.
We'll be able to provide a carbon-neutral energy product to the city to allow the city to decarbonize and reduce its carbon footprint, as well as reduce local air emissions that help prevent local respiratory issues.
The boiler is expected to be finished and operating sometime next year. Races for 2026 continue to heat up on the campaign trail as we get closer to election year. The newest name in the race for Michigan governor, that's next. Now to your voice, your vote, and the critical race for Michigan governor. Former Republican Speaker of the House Tom Leonard has announced his run for governor. You might remember the name most recently when he ran for Attorney General in 2018, losing to current AG Dana Nessel. Leonard served 3 terms in the state house, beginning in 2012, and then worked as an assistant prosecutor in Genesee County, whose current sheriff, Chris Swanson, is also running for the seat as a Democrat. Leonard says he's looking to grow the state's population. He joins other Republican candidates Mike Cox, John James, Anthony Hudson, and Eric Nesbitt. The former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine and Grand Rapids native is announcing a run for Congress. Bridget Brink announced this week she would run for Michigan's 7th congressional district as a Democrat. That district covers southern and parts of central Michigan, including the state capital. It's one of Michigan's most competitive districts, being represented by now Democratic U.S. Senator Alyssa Slaken before now Republican Congressman Tom Barrett took the seat. Brink stepped down as the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine in April in protest of what she said was President Donald Trump's unfair treatment of Ukraine. People living in Lowel Charter Township are being asked to decide a funding proposal to help pay for a treatment to eliminate spongy moths. The flying insect, formerly known as gypsy moths, are an invasive species that are known to damage trees and shrubs. If approved by voters in the November 4th general election, the millage would raise money to fund a community-wide aerial spraying for the pests for 3 consecutive years. Township officials say if the millage does not pass, spraying would not happen, which they say would create weak, diseased, and eventually dead trees. New details now on the effort to bring back lifeguards to South Haven. The City Council gave the green light by passing a new contract to help develop a lifeguard plan for the city. This will kickstart the process to bring back lifeguards to South Haven for the first time since 2001. The deal with company Double Haul Solutions is worth roughly $45,000. Critics of the new contract argue that there may be issues surrounding liability with the current plan, as well as concerns with Double Haul Solutions themselves. Others say the proposal was the right decision to make to end the over 2 decades of lifeguardless beaches in South Haven.
What I am seeing here is not what I expected. And I don't believe that the steps are in the right order to efficiently navigate this from start to finish. And I cannot support the proposal as presented.
The city manager is asking us, or telling us, this is what I need. I'm saying let's give her what she needs so she can give us what we want, which is a lifeguard program.
They do have in the proposal.
The council approved that proposal 5-1. During this next phase, consultants with Double Haul Solutions will work with city staff and leaders to examine opportunities, feasibility, and offer recommendations for the new program. The goal is for a plan to be ready for review by the City Council sometime this fall. The John Ball Zoo here in Grand Rapids is narrowing down possible nearby locations for their proposed aquarium. Coming up, we'll tell you where the zoo is looking and what local leaders are saying about the possible economic impact on the region. You are looking at what could be the site of a new aquarium in West Michigan. This drone video shows a large swath of land under consideration in Walker. 13 on your side's Lauren Baker spoke with leaders who say it could be a game changer for West Michigan.
Soon, all of this land could be transformed into a new home for our water friends.
We're so excited. It's been years in the making.
That's John Ball Zoo CEO Peter D'Arianzo talking about the potential of building what could be the state's largest aquarium in Walker. He says it follows John Ball Zoo's current mission, joining education and conservation efforts together.
We have a unique opportunity to create this conservation corridor from A to Z, from the aquarium to the zoo, where we're standing right now, with Millennium right in the middle. That provides well over 2,000 acres, so our community can connect to the outdoors, learn about wildlife, wild places.
And it doesn't stop with the animals. He says the location allows them to educate people about wetlands and the impact of our changing ecosystem.
Part of the site is a prior landfill. We want to actually take this site and make it better and have an opportunity to demonstrate to our community that there are ways to restore and to create something of value for the community.
But of course, the economic drive is also a huge factor.
This aquarium will generate more than $3 billion of net economic activity in the first 10 years. And it's not surprising when you learn that 65% of the attendance will originate from outside the state of Michigan.
Don't start planning your weekend trips yet. For now, this site is just under consideration. The project is still in its beginning stages and could take 5 to 10 years for it to be built.
And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. We'll see you next week.